A couple of things that we were talking about between Courtney and myself of just experiences that we've experienced over the last couple of years and connecting the dots. And this is a conversation I've also had with a couple of the athletes at the gym in the last couple of days. And it's just kind of, things tend to circulate for a reason, I think, and they kind of bring just different things, and we get to acknowledge different things in our life. And so I want to give you a little backstory. So one thing they were talking about is basically our scenario over the last couple of years. And so those that don't know, so Courtney and I opened up our gym, CrossFit Surge, almost 10 years ago now. It's crazy to think about, almost a decade ago. And, when we first opened up, literally, thanks to my mom and dad, we were able to get the funds together and basically fix up a building and basically start an adventure that we really didn't know what we were getting ourselves into. Courtney and I literally started dating 6 months into us opening a business, and we literally put everything that we had into it. We were eating ramen noodle. We were living in her brother's house that was being foreclosed on. We literally didn't have cable. We didn't have TV. We didn't have, barely had internet. We really didn't have anything for the first about 3 years of our adventure. And, the part that always drove us was essentially being able to share our love and passion for obviously fitness, but more importantly, build a community of people that we love, adore, felt we had a common interest in just on serving people. And so, that carried us through, into our first endeavor. And then we expanded, a year and a half into opening our first, unit that we were in. And then we eventually expanded behind us as we went through that. And, we were very fortunate that we got into a building that was owned by, he was an older gentleman. He owned the building for 30 years. He was an old school kind of guy of, as long as you did what you said you were going to do, we were all on good terms. And, we basically, every time we expanded, we didn't renew our lease agreement on a contract wise. We just basically went over email and a handshake deal, old school status of, hey, this is what the terms that we'll agree with, and we'll go take it from there. And, us being young business owners of, my word is my bond. My handshake is what I stand by. Drive safe out there. Sounds like somebody's having a rough time. He went through, the economy started changing, everything started changing. He was having his own incidences with the building. And so he ended up deciding to sell the building. Well, unknowing to us that was coming down the line for us. And the new ownership took over, and all of a sudden they decided that they were not going to agree to the same terms that we were on. And so there we were, 7 years into this adventure of ours, all of a sudden with a load of uncertainty. All of a sudden we went on to thinking that we had a contract for being in this building for the next, 3 years, to all of a sudden them basically like, yeah, that deal you think is on the table, especially for the rate that you think you're having, we're not going to honor that. And, at that time, it brought a ton of pain. It brought a ton of uncertainty. It brought a ton of scarcity, ton of just insecurity. It brought every emotion that I had never experienced to that point as a business owner into the limelight. And it was, at that time, I'll admit I went into a very dark place. All of a sudden, this agreement that, this was our livelihood, this was our passion, this was everything that we had, was all of a sudden I felt was going to be stolen from us. It was going to be taken from us. It was, all the verbiage that I was placing around that was in a super negative place, and it was in a very disempowering place that was taking me on there. And I went into a dark place where everything, like, I went from, wanting to serve people to all of a sudden feeling like everyone was against us, feeling like the world was going to cave in, feeling like, all they want to do is just take these things away from us. And looking back, all they were doing is operating their business, right? Like, they made an investment, they bought a property that they were trying to flip, they were trying to do on that, right? And so they were doing what they felt was right for them on those things. But, they went from literally our rent within a month basically went up 300%. Our building went from being almost fully occupied to literally just us being the only ones left inside the building because everyone was basically leaving or getting kicked out or doing whatever, and we had nowhere else to go. During that time frame, marijuana was just coming in, and you know what? You couldn't find warehouse and property to run our facility out of because everything was getting bought up for marijuana. And so literally, I was in nothing but just despair, disarray, angry. You know what? I literally, looking back, I can still feel what that feeling was like, of feeling like everything hurt. Everything my body felt completely toxic because of the emotional relationship I was putting on myself of, you know what? How dare they do this? How dare they do that? You know what? The world sucks. Everyone's unfair. All the stuff that I was telling myself wasn't doing myself any good, and I was focusing on the wrong things. And so fast forward, like I said, literally our rent went up 300% in a matter of in 30 days. And not to mention, we were on a month-to-month contract where they could have literally just told us at any point, hey, you have 30 days and you have to leave. And all of a sudden you have to find out somewhere else what you're going to be doing. And so, fast forward, we were in just complete disarray. We didn't know what exactly was going to go on. We were literally, scraping by like anything that we possibly could. And, Courtney came about finding essentially a marketing company, because we were doing anything to that point, right? Like we were basically for 7.5, 8 years functioning on nothing but word of mouth, right? Like we were in a good place. We were in a good agreement that we thought with our old landlord, and we didn't really need to. And all of a sudden, fast forward with our rent skyrocketing and all of a sudden bills and overhead and everything else going through the roof, we didn't know what else to do. And so literally we were in a really, really bad place. And so Courtney came across a marketing company that, at the time was, it was a very new experience for us. And the commitment to get involved with them was $16,000. Right? Like, just for us, like we literally were scraping by of whether or not we could pay our bills, pay our mortgage, pay anything. And all of a sudden the deal or the opportunity was on the table of, hey, we can do this, and it could probably save our business. It could probably save our livelihood and everything else, but it's going to take $16,000 of commitment to do. And, it was not an easy thing. It was not an easy decision. It was one of those, well, if we're going to do this, this is essentially going to either make us or it's going to break us. And coming from the spot that we were in, we chose to go forth. We chose to, we'll take the chance on here. And you know what? The agreement was of, it was a weekly payment. It was a weekly payment until you reached, I think, essentially 6 weeks of $16,000. And we had to, we put the load on our back of, we're going to do this. We're going to do everything we can. And we did it. We allowed ourselves to get ourselves out of the murky water, out of those kind of things. And it wasn't easy. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of despair. It was a lot of different things that we were able to experience. But looking back at that allowed us to grow. Right? Like looking back, like that was one of the hardest time frames of my life, of just on the uncertainty standpoint of knowing that all this effort, all my dreams, all my hopes, all these things could be taken away from me in an instant. But instead of going into a place of just trying to hold on to myself and restrict and like not coming from a place of growth, but it allowed us to, we're going to do this. And it allowed us to look back at that moment in time of like, that was a place for us to grow. And then that led on to Courtney moving into her endeavor of getting into the happiness endeavor, and allowing her, or Hungry for Happiness, her certification. That was another $12,000, right? Like if connecting the dots, if we wouldn't have taken the first plunge of $16,000, we probably also wouldn't have taken the plunge to spend another $12,000 for her to be certified. And then in addition to that, fast forward to where we are now, that also wouldn't have opened our eyes to seeing the things that we're talking about and we're teaching inside our Shift project, of transforming what we've all been taught, of what we've seen inside the fitness industry, inside of what we've been taught since we were younger, inside of the conditioning, inside of where our world is in such despair of not just of talking about obesity obesity, the health crisis and everything else, but on mental health, why we are dealing with still prejudices, still all those things in our environment, of understanding that they're coming from a different place and a much bigger, broader picture than what we've been taught. And so by connecting the dots, looking back 2.5 years ago of a time frame that I thought was going to just rip us apart and take us away, looking back at that I couldn't be more grateful for. Right? Like during that time frame, it was the worst, probably one of the worst endeavors that I've ever been through. Right? Like I've also had other things on relationships and other things that have come and gone throughout my life. But looking back at that is looking at that as opportunities for growth. And now that has allowed me to transform my life, to allow me to shift into different philosophies, different ideologies, different just awareness as far as things come in through my life, and understanding that those were all gifts, right? Like those times of turmoil, those times of obstacles, those times of just uncertainty that I was experiencing, those were actually gifts and opportunities. And I think what I've been able to understand for myself, and the things that I've talked about with a couple other people this week, and especially with Court and with the others that are going through our 10-day shift program, is what if that you could shift and instead of looking at all the events in our life whether I just had this conversation with another one of my members who just experienced a very close, unfortunate passing of one of our family members. If what we focus on expands, what we focus on is what we get in our lives, and if we can change our approach of what's going on, and it doesn't mean that it's necessarily always going to feel good, but if we can change our approach to focusing on the things that we can bring gratitude to, right? Like maybe these times of despair are actually an opportunity for me to grow. Maybe I'm looking at this as this time frame of what I'm going through is actually the universe telling me, hey, you're not aligning with what you want to really do, what your purpose is here on this world to do. The conversation I had with one of our girls the other day was literally, you were doing something that was serving you in a particular way, but it really wasn't your full potential and fulfilling you. And so perhaps the world, she ended up getting transferred to another division and was miserable. She went from a place that she was comfortable in to transferring unknowingly to a division that she was super unhappy with. And maybe that was the universe saying, hey, you know what? You are meant for bigger things. You are meant for more fulfillment in your life. You are meant to contribute in different ways. And you know what? The world, the universe, whatever you believe, is going to put things in there to help you find congruency so you can truly fulfill and be your true self of what you're trying to do. But it's allowing yourself to open your eyes of what else could this mean, and where else is it coming from? And you know what? Maybe this is an opportunity, not something that is despair. And so for me, I can't tell you of those moments I'm looking back in my life that were absolutely miserable going through, but coming through on the other side of looking at it in a moment of appreciation, and coming from a place of gratitude, and coming from a place of, oh my God, I would not be in this scenario. I wouldn't be in the shoes I'm in right now if I didn't experience all those things before, right? If I didn't have that relationship go wrong that I was attaching myself to, I wouldn't be able to appreciate the relationship I have now. If I didn't, unfortunately, lash out at my loved ones, my family members, my brother, and cause a lot of despair in my younger age, I wouldn't necessarily be able to appreciate the relationships I have now with them and understand that, you know what, I took advantage, I took them for granted so many years ago. But now looking back, I get to know that I get to appreciate every second that I have with them, because I know what it's like to also be on the other side of that. And so if we can come from a place of gratitude and come from a place of every event in our life can actually be a place that lifts us up into a higher realm and lifts us up into being a better person and fulfilling us, I think that can first transform the way we go about being happier, being more fulfilled, being more grateful. And if we can feel that, I know we can also pour that into other people as well. So that's just something that's been just a common theme for this week for me. So I wanted to share that with you guys. If you got benefit, if you had your own experiences on there, love for you guys to share that. I think that's something that we can pour more into each other. We can pour more into ourselves, and we can just spread that to other people. So I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. Like I said, It's a little slick out there. So be safe. I appreciate you guys. Love you all for just being you. And you guys have a great, fantastic day. Take care. Much love. Later, y'all.